Okay, so we should be live. So welcome everybody to the Node.js benchmarking workgroup meeting for June 5th, 2018. And we're going to follow our standard agenda. So I'm just going to pick that up, find that, hold on. Open up the minutes doc. If people can, here, I'll paste the link into the chat. If everybody could add themselves, that would be great. Oops. Oh, down there, okay. Okay, just doing that, adding myself to start with. Okay, so top of our agenda, announcements. Anybody have any announcements this week? Okay, if no announcements, then on to the issues extracted by looking at the benchmarking agenda tag across the repos. The first one is brainstorming, capturing and documenting areas where people can contribute, but I think we should leave that to the end because we can probably use whatever time we have there. The next one on the agenda was footprint increase Acme Air after load. That one, again, we've talked about for the last few times. There should be an incoming fix, just hasn't quite made it yet. Fix incoming. Require cache perf much lower. I think, Udom, you were looking at that one. Do you have any update?
Yeah, so update is I'm not able to reproduce it. Either I tried many ways. The way our script is running, there might be some changes required to the way we calculate that the performance or the whatever the number, the size. But somehow I'm not able to reproduce what we see on the web page, and I don't have access to any of our benchmarking machines. Maybe I forgot the process because I've not accessed for long. I would like to get an access maybe a day for a couple of days, and then I try it on there, if that is.
Sure. Yeah, so to be honest, we haven't set it up so that all benchmarking workgroup members can have access to the machines yet. It's something on the to-do list. But I could set it. I can work with you to give you access to run it for some period of time there.
Yeah, I had access. Remember when I did the Node.js?
Yeah.
And then I don't know whether it goes away after some time.
Well, generally, yes. Unless we give access, and we can set that up, we'd have to set up a new type of key. Like currently we have test. We can make a new category, which is like benchmark.
Okay.
And then have people who have access to that benchmark key be able to log in general. Otherwise, like individual keys we remove after the need has passed.
I see. Okay.
So it's just hasn't been pressing enough for me to actually set up the other one. So I think for this one, again, I can just give you access, for a defined period of time.
Yeah, if there is a way you can do it, that will be really helpful.
Yep.
Because I can reproduce on my desktop or even on one of the Xeon server I have.
Okay.
Don't seem to have that performance number.
That number at all, or just the difference between the two different builds?
Yeah, the difference between two different nodes.
Okay. It's interesting. Would that in any way? No, it wouldn't make sense. Like if something changed on the machine. But anyway, it sounds like getting access to the machine is a good next step. I cannot reproduce.
And also the way our commits are listed, right? They are not always kind of mixed with, they are not in sequence. When you look at the Git one line commit list of commits, they are not like date wise. They are so when I try to run my script to reduce those commits where that performance, they're not in sequence. That's one of the hard problem.
Yeah, they tend to be like when the commit was created, not when it was landed, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't know if there's a way to list them some other, because really what you want is like, when did this land?
Yeah, so there is an option with commit, and I'm new to this commit also, Git also. There no FF. so that it
Okay.
kind of creates a new commit object when it really lands.
Hmm.
Maybe that might be better way to I can track, I guess. But then you are trying to change the process how commit land on node.
Yeah. I was even just thinking that if there was an option to get that would let you say, show me the commits in order that they landed, not when they were created, would be useful.
Yeah, that is true.
Because, hmm, yeah, it's worth looking. It's worth investigating that. So Michael slash Udom to coordinate. Okay, so I'll coordinate with you to get access. In the end, what I'll need is your SSH key.
Yeah.
So if you can send me one through email, we'll work to get you access there, so you can see if you can recreate there. That's good.
Okay.
The next one was add ghost.js workload to the benchmark. I think that was your next thing, though, right? So maybe.
Yeah, so there was one problem why I wasn't able to contribute till now. So Ghost by default runs in two. So Ghost runs in two modes. One is a dev mode, development mode, and there is one in production mode. And I was last couple weeks ago, I was just doing the analysis, and I found that the performance of the production mode is almost twice that of a dev mode, which is the default mode. And
Okay.
definitely for our testing, I think we want to run it in production mode, and which requires some other extra setting which I did not know. I found out last week.
Okay.
So I think I'm ready now to. So once I get that access, I can definitely issue try it out with my script on them same at the same time with
Okay.
the required perf.
Does it require any extra installation things or anything like that?
No, so we decided that we'll use the MySQL Docker container.
Right.
So that takes care of the database requirement. The node is fine. No, not really. There is only AB Apache Bench utility. I don't know whether you may have on these machines. AB tool.
AB, not necessarily, unless it was being used from something else, probably not.
Okay, because that's just a one executable part of the Apache 2 utils package on Ubuntu at least.
Apache Tools util. Well, anyway, we can try that. I guess the first thing is we'll have to actually install Docker.
Oh, we don't have a Docker. Okay,
No, we
so
don't have
that would be.
Docker installed there, so that'll definitely be something to.
So we have two options: either go with the Docker or go with the MySQL default. It will start the database. Or I would say Docker would be easier
Yeah,
because
I think it makes sense at this point to try and start using Docker. Um, I think we talked a little bit about it. Like, we didn't think having Docker installed would actually cause any performance degradation to the other things. Like, I guess is the daemon itself running going to be an issue was the question.
yeah, daemon runs, but I've not seen really. I mean, I did the Docker container performance numbers, but definitely don't see nothing more than 0.5% variation. But that's too
Okay.
little for day to day current to run
Right. Okay.
variations.
So I guess we can just install. We can always uninstall it or turn it off if it turns out to be an issue. So
So yeah, so
now,
once I get the access, I can do that. Try run the MySQL in Docker container, which will run that on 3306 port, what I need, and then you just start the node server in production mode
right,
and AB at utility, so that we
right.
can generate the numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Now the key thing we need to make sure is that we have the specific steps for installing Docker, so that we can, like, we really want to get that into our Ansible templates,
Oh, I see. Okay.
right? So that if we never need to like recreate the benchmarking machine, we can actually do that.
Okay.
So it's like if we do, yeah, let's the two of you, we can sync on installing Docker. Just want to make sure at the end we have like, here's the very specific list of what we had to do.
Yeah, for the Go, so Docker and then Apache utils package, which has the AB binary.
Right. What is that AB binary needed for?
So it's a load generator for HTTP.
Right.
So you
Is there
just
any reason we wouldn't run that in a Docker container as well?
what was the other tool you said?
Well, you said the AB thing. Like, is there any reason we wouldn't install that in a Docker container?
Oh, oh, that's just very, very small binary. Well, if the Docker doesn't have that package, then we have to create the Docker container. I have to get the Apache utils, put it in a Docker, and then publish it, I guess, right?
It would be, well, I don't think we'd have to publish it. It would be like a Docker script, I think. Anyway,
Right.
not necessarily the right answer, but we should. I'm just thinking once we have Docker, it's like as opposed to installing things on the machine, the more we sort of use the containers to avoid pollution, probably the better.
Okay.
But that if it's just this, who knows? Maybe it's already there too. If it's part of a standard install, so we can take a look at that first.
Yeah, it's very simple binary, just or maybe I don't know whether our machine has a work. Work would also work. WRK tool that
Yeah.
could work
I
as well.
think WRK is installed already because that was needed for one of the core benchmarks, I think. Well, I suppose actually that's the wrong benchmarking machine, but
yeah, I believe that one's already.
I saw a pull request through the other day that I think it's been put into an Ansible script now. So I think
was that work or something else? But I think work may have been installed earlier.
Yeah, I think it's been installed, but I think somebody in the working group has put together it in a Ansible script.
Yes, there was an Ansible. Yeah, there was a starting Ansible script for the benchmarking machines. Now, the main place it would have been run is on the two ones that were donated by Intel.
Yeah,
not 100% sure it was run on this other one, but we still have a bit of work to sort of make those templates completely filled out, but at least they're a start for sure.
Yeah, if the WRK is available either 1 or 2, then we don't need AP. We can use
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's check that first because might as well have the smallest set of dependencies. Okay. Right. So then that's what we had on the list except for 2222. Let me just move that down. Drag that down. Okay, so this one here is AJ is kind of working across the repo to help pull together things that people can get involved in and to start working on when they join the community. And so we're kind of doing this in a few of the different working groups to sort of brainstorm a list of things that we could think of where people could jump in and participate. So maybe AJ, do you want to give a bit more of an introduction than that?
Sure. So like you said, it's kind of an entry point for people who are interested in working on the Node project. More specifically, I'm working with the mentorship team to have kind of a constant source of volunteers. So I can directly direct those people towards whatever items we can get on that list, and they'd be able to help with those specific tasks. The different working groups or initiatives come up with in the meantime. We're kicking off our first cohort for the mentorship team on June 15th, tentatively. Or is that right? Yeah. And we hope to have some items on the list by then to show those people. So
now the discussion we had in the security working group, which I thought was interesting, like if you had any more discussions on whether we would add these to a different repo or keep them in the working group repos.
I opened an issue with the ComCom and on the Node.js.org repo. Haven't heard back from anyone yet on either of those. I'm assuming because of the summit.
Right. What are the issues? Just let me see.
I don't have those on hand. It was just basically asking the Node.js org team if they thought it belonged there or not. And then ComCom asking sort of for permission to have a separate repo for that.
Right. Let me see. I thought I remembered
on the ComCom one.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that one. Right, new repo. Yeah, I guess there's only, yeah, nobody else commented. Okay, I'm gonna com Node.js. See if we can get any comments. Okay. So I guess the idea is to spend a bit more that, the time that we have now to kind of brainstorm things that we think on the benchmarking working group front we could get new people who are joining to help out with. Now, obviously, there's the write new benchmarks based on the matrix, so I'll add that in. Where are we? And this can kind of be, the idea is this could kind of be like a wish list. So even though, one of the existing members doesn't have time to jump in and do that, it's still good to have kind of a wish list so that if other people have some time, they might be able to see something interesting there and jump in.
How about that Ansible template? Do we have that created? I remember we talked about last year, I guess. Sometime.
Yeah, no, we don't have a good answer on that. There's been like a little bit of progress, but if somebody was like interesting build wise, that would definitely be one. So I'm going to start capturing some of these in the issue here. I'm sorry, I just have to get back to the notes. And other people can type stuff in too here if you want. So one is look at use case / benchmark matrix. Okay, help build Ansible templates for build machines. So that's two good ones.
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add no task is too small. This first kickoff date, we're only planning to do a 1 month trial run. So
okay.
They could work on some really small tasks if there's anything random that needs to be done.
I'm just adding one, which is update the benchmark infra to add notifications. So basically today we have our charts, but we don't necessarily get notified if something regresses significantly. So that would be another useful one in my mind.
Should we fill in the details about these? Let's say, okay, that's at the top level, but then should we kind of say what are the different things we will need in order to complete that?
I think the idea here is that, as much detail as we can add would be good, but hopefully as long as it's enough for somebody to say, hey, I want to help out with that or not, then we could fill in the ones that people volunteer for. The general discussion we had before was like, we don't want to, if it takes too much time to add things to this list, it'll be harder for people to throw things on the list.
Yeah, for example, notifications. So let's say you do a run, that means in order to identify the regression, you need to know a data from previous run, right? Maybe yesterday's run. And then you can think about, so that would be one task. How do you obtain that? Then second will be, can you get the git commit for those two runs? So that in the email or notification, you can not only have the regression, but say, hey, that was the last commit, this is this commit.
Okay, now here, let's add that in here. So
clear the one step, two. So the individual task.
Yeah, no, that's good. So basically detect when their regression, identify list of commits between builds I guess even just, and then there's send notification.
Yeah.
So this is like email, issue, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that list of commits and then author of that commit, so that you identify, oh, this is the person, that's a commit, and then you send a notification. Minimum. Individual. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if you can, if you're looking at the minutes, does that look like a good description now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can add more, but this definitely. So it's individual task. So someone say, hey, I can write a small script to detect the regression. I can.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, like it probably would be integrated into what we already have to say, okay, once I've posted today's result, do I look at the last two results? Or yeah, somehow we basically have to keep the list of results and figure out a delta when something's gone down by more than a certain amount.
Yeah.
One detail about the wish list thing, I think at a minimum, it should have a contact person for each task, someone that can be pinged for more details on the task. And then also optionally issue opened on the respective repo that can be linked to in the wish list.
Right. I guess that was the question, whether we open issues in the repo itself or in that other repo.
Oh, right. Yeah, that would be fine too.
Yeah. So are there any other ideas of things that come to people's mind in terms of adding to that list? We can also, I'm going to look at our open issues. Okay, so just opening the issue list, see if any of these are good. Benchmarks for async web tooling. I think it would be good to like actually call out benchmark to cover promise/async usage. Does that make sense? Just in that's an area that's really picking up that we don't have good coverage for.
Is that 188?
That was 205 was the one I looked at.
Okay. Oh, web tooling.
Let me just see. Oh, I mean, that's just the one that made me think of that. Right, this one's actually a good one. Raise awareness. How to raise an issue. So from the survey, we found that people wouldn't necessarily know how to raise issues related to performance. So that issue is covering that. So I think that would be a good list.
So this is just a documentation then?
Yeah, that one's more documentation related stuff. Here I'm going to, I'll add this as context here. Just sort of through the different ones to look.
Yeah, I had opened one issue, but that was one. was 155. So every workload we have like same set of scripts, starting the MongoDB server,
Right.
and that thing that was about, can we have a common scripts instead of everybody
Okay. Yeah.
writing new scripts?
Okay. So I'll put that on the list. I'll put your name as somebody that they could work with, right, on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So that's another good one. Add release dates to charts. There's a good one. Okay. Actually, these are two good ones that which probably is somewhat related to even finding regressions, reporting them.
That was
Okay. So looking through the list, those are the ones that pop into my mind. Now, I guess, are there just any other things around benchmarking that, like, if we had, that we don't necessarily think we'll have time to get to, but we'd like to see if there was extra time? Even any documentation or... The stuff you did, Udom, around like being able to triage like commits.
right.
Is there anything like in terms of tooling or whatever that would be useful to have somebody build if we had free time?
Yeah, so this was just a small shell script, as I said, you get this list of commits and you kind of binary trace it, and get to the commit you're interested in. Yeah, that is something is simple enough. It doesn't require a lot of dependency other than just a git log and the shell. That's all.
I guess the question is like, can we formalize that? Like, is what you have perfectly functional, or is there something that with a bit of work could make it better? Or
well, right now it is not completely like, okay, you can run on anything. I just need a little bit changes. It's not completely automated. For example, the commits are hard coded. They're not passed for the commit, things like that. So simple stuff.
So is that something that we could get somebody else to do?
Yeah, we can definitely.
Okay, so basically we would call that complete
regression hunt or something.
Complete. Yeah. Okay. Regression.
Hunting the regression.
Hunt tool document and add to repo. Right.
And yeah, one of the problem with that is, so git part is okay. You can get from the array list of all the commits. You can build the node. That is easy part. But then automatically it should run the benchmark. That is the harder part. Because, or if your benchmark has a database server, all those things. That's what makes it complicated. This initial part is simple, but that running actual workload, that is the harder part.
Okay.
Like Acme would run with it needs JMeter to run, Node.js needs Python to run, web tooling doesn't need anything. So all those, that's what makes it a little complicated.
Right. Now, in theory, if we run that on the benchmarking machine, all those things are there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we got to something where then we could just kick it off through Jenkins or something, that would be handy.
Yeah. So the script which just write a script which get the list of commits and then pass that to our scripts, which will build that particular version of Node and run the workload.
Yeah.
We can explore more, but yeah, that could be a good item.
Okay. Gareth, you remember any things we were hoping to do before but never got to, or?
Well, the ideal thing would be to be able to narrow down the full list of core benchmarks to represent a good subset to be able to then go and chart.
Right. But, okay. I mean, that's a pretty big one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a difficult one to do, but I mean, even picking a very small list, for example, like picking the top 5 buffer benchmarks or something like that, getting some of those into a nightly run. If we can get a set of benchmarks that only take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to run or something, then it's potentially the sort of thing that you can get something in the charts when you see that either it's not very representative or you spot something else that's a bit better, so you can work on it and change it as you go.
Yeah,
but at the moment we're collecting pretty much no data on that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that that's a good one, but I don't think that's a good one for somebody brand new coming in. Because I think we've had hard enough, like people who already were sort of ramped up in terms of benchmarking had a hard time figuring out what to do on that front. If we can think of something concrete to do, but the sort of the general problem, I think, is too much to expect.
Also, what I've been doing in the meantime, until we get that repo opened, is after these meetings, I generally open an issue on the repo that I had the meeting with so that they don't have to come up with everything right in the meeting. Like if they think of things later as they're working on something else, they can just make a note and I'll track that issue.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, any other thoughts or ideas? And like AJ just said, obviously we can add additional ones as we think of them.
Yeah, I might go and have a look through some of the old minutes and stuff like that, because I think
that's a good idea.
That we spoke about on meetings that we said, we should do that, and then a couple of months later, we sort of forgot about those.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
I think probably if we spend some time looking through the old minutes, we'll probably be able to pick up some more stuff that.
Okay, I'm going to just make a note that you're going to do that. Okay, well, I think in terms of brainstorming, we're probably at the end. I can't think of any others unless anybody else can.
I have one idea. I haven't looked at the benchmarking repo really at all, but is there any documentation on the processes of like somebody who isn't a member to know how to do the things that need to be done in the benchmarking repo?
Trying to think what more we would document.
Because I was just thinking if it's a new person coming in, it would be really clear to them what isn't clear. If they were having trouble figuring out what to do, they might know that needed to be documented.
Yeah, so we have our nightly things. We have I guess we could just say, read through the documentation and identify gaps. Does that make sense? we could say read documentation review. Read through doc, find gaps, and then obviously write up doc for missing parts. That sounds good. I don't know off the top of my head what's missing, but having somebody go through and look to see what is or isn't clear and then filling in the gaps would be useful. Any other suggestions?
I was thinking that since the Gareth added core benchmarks to our benchmarking, right? He finished that one of the issue, 127, but we don't publish any of them. Is there a way maybe we can think about what would be the best way to highlight that? Or
like they're run ad hoc, right?
yeah, now like a developer can go and start a run like Matteo, and but then
so there should be a document in the repo somewhere, I must admit, without looking around on it. So I put together a document for how to run the benchmark and stuff like that, or how to run the different benchmarks. So it's in the docs folder, core benchmarks.
oh, I see. Okay.
But I mean, yeah, I think when I published it, first of all, I asked if there was any feedback from people who wanted to have a go and find something that doesn't work, or maybe it's not particularly clear. Because hey, I put it together, so for me it's really clear. But I'm well aware that when you put something together yourself, it's sometimes difficult to see what's maybe not obvious.
I mean, the question is now so we have a process to run them. Do we have any thinking? Should we publish them? Because I know that we cannot run all of them every nightly basis because they would just take too long.
Yeah.
But subset of them, is there a way to run subset from the list? Maybe arrays or anything underlying buffer.
Yeah, you can select the individual categories.
And and the next step would be, can we publish it? Is there something someone can do?
Right. Well, I was just thinking, what would, like, since we can't run it regularly, what would the publishing look like make sense?
Yeah, if there is a date, and well, we run it Intel and we do see some of the variations, and we have caught a couple of regression internally. Maybe it could be because of the machine was down or something else was running, or sometimes one particular V8 was a problem, something like that. Would it be useful for a benchmarking side?
Well, do you have a subset? Like, I think we've always wanted to get a subset that we would say this is a sensible set to run, and then we could actually track that, right?
Yeah, I thought the buffers would be the most basic one, right? It's like for everything underlying is buffer. So now that
I think one of the issues that we've had that a lot of the benchmarks, if you just tell it go and run buffers, it can take many hours to run. And I know that sort of sounds like a defeatist sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, I fully agree that we need getting something running is better than running nothing at all. Because I mean, I think at the moment if we were to look at the utilization of the machines, especially the benchmarks ones, they're not exactly running sort of.
No, we could run a lot more, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe we could have a go at just pick out, I don't know, see if we've got an easy way to again, it's another thing that's going to take some time, but maybe if we just find we could just go and kick off even a benchmark buffer one now. Just get a up-to-date thing of how long that actual folder takes to run, and if it's less than an hour, have a go at starting running it on a nightly basis. The only problem then is that we've still got to put together the parser to then go and drop them all the stuff into a chart.
Yeah. I mean, for example, when we made this allocation API, the old one is deprecated, so that would be something. Now the default one is you initialize the buffer, and that's what the new API says. If we can test only that part, that would be useful. How it was before and now. Buffer and subset within a buffer, I guess.
So I just wrote down core benchmarks, identify a subset of buffer tests that it makes sense to run in 30 mins or so. Work to generate chart from those runs. Or number is what I meant, number from those runs, and then publish run and nightly.
Yep.
Because if we think, if we think buffers in particular are important, then that sort of is a more concrete in terms of saying which ones could we run in a reasonable time, and then we could start to try and run those.
Yeah. But I say, I mean, if we try and run one set of benchmarks at least, have a look at how long it takes, and then we can work from there by either reducing it, increasing, changing to a different type, keeping an eye on things, and see what we get.
I'm not familiar with the processes behind running the benchmarks, but is there a way that it could be like chunked, like where you could run different subset of benchmarks each day, so that within a period of time, like a month or something, they were all run every time?
Potentially. As I say, the two issues are the pure machine time, which obviously spreading them out through the week or whatever would help to address that. But we then need a way of having a number that we can then put in the chart.
Right, because if you run all the benchmarks, they take, I don't know, what was it, multiple days. Yeah. And then there's also like 1,000 different numbers, which, we can't add 1,000 different charts. But
maybe we need to try and what about we try and get some numbers for some of the different areas, then in a meeting in the near future, whether it's one or the one after, we have a look at the amount of time that currently takes and the number of results that we end up getting out of it. If we can get the numbers in some sort of fairly easy to manage format, we can have a play around with different sort of things that we can do on the numbers to try and get something meaningful. So again, like geometric.
I think we had the list of times at one point in one of the issues.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we could go that from the start. I think there's a fair bit of new benchmarks being added and them being changed and stuff like that. But
yes, they could be bigger too. So
yeah, but I mean, still, we could either go and run what we've got there, or even it should be fairly easy to modify to just go and say run each benchmark once and list off the time and put together something. And at least we could use that for estimating how long that's going to take.
Right. Are you volunteering to do that?
I can. Yeah, I'll put in an issue, and then I can try and update where I get to, and if somebody else has a spare few minutes, they can also jump in and help out.
Okay, open issue to start to capture additional. Okay.
Do these benchmarks have to be run on like a consistent hardware, or could they be run on different machines with differing capabilities?
To do a comparison, they need to be on the same machine.
Okay.
Yeah. That said, there wouldn't be anything stopping us saying we always run buffer on machine A, net on machine B, and whatever else on machine C.
Yeah.
But if we're wanting to compare them over time, ideally they should be always run on the same machine without us, for example, going and installing extra bits and other things that might impact the results. But
yeah, I mean, I guess you could think of the total crowdsourced. Everybody runs a pre and after, And if you had 1,000 different machines, you might be able to break it up. But
Yeah, that's kind of where I was heading. But
I mean, that would give you a, do we think it's significantly worse than yesterday kind of thing that you couldn't really chart that very well necessarily if it was a different machine every time, but you could always say, is it good or bad between these 2 days?
Which that could be good enough. And if we at that point are then going and keeping a record of commit hashes and stuff like that,
yeah,
you can always then go back in time and run the 2 commit hashes and in more detail on the same machine or whatever on a particular subset of benchmarks. So maybe we don't need to be recording all the detail just to sort of thing in the air type.
Yeah. The only risk there would be is what would we do if somebody reports a difference? Like if we then have to rerun it on some other machines and compare and investigate that, we just can't have stuff that's too noisy.
Yeah, I suppose.
But it's worth thinking about those kind of alternate, are there alternate things we could do? It's definitely worth thinking about all those. Okay, so I think it sounds like, Gareth, you'll open an issue and maybe we'll start to look at those numbers again and can start thinking about what we might do.
Yep. In a minute or 2, I'll have a number for you. Just finishing.
Okay.
Perfect.
So any other?
I do have one item to talk. I forgot earlier. So we have submitted. One of my colleagues has submitted the huge pages support in Node Core.
Okay.
He just submitted the PR.
Yep.
Is there a way we can, let's say, build it on our benchmarking? So the PR right now has some numbers with the web tooling and a couple more. Okay, let me post it here so you can see it.
Right. So.
So can we list a special build because you have to configure with I think huge large page or something. There's a configure option. Is there a way we can add that to our build so we get to test Acme Air and all other workloads?
Right. Let me just see. We have benchmark. So you'd want master, right?
Yeah.
So let me just Control C. I'm going to, so I think what I could do is create a new job, which you could then tweak to do what you want there. There's no easy way to add a parameter or something like that to the existing jobs, but
I see. Okay.
So let's just see. Okay, create, come on.
You need to check that the benchmarking machine has the huge pages already reserved.
Yeah, I believe I think the code internally checks it, and if it doesn't have it, then I think ignores and uses the default one, 4K, and it will give you some kind of warning message, I think.
But I guess then we'd need to enable it, which would affect potentially, like if we needed to enable it on the machine, that could potentially affect things, right?
So the default one, sorry, go ahead, Gareth.
I was going to say it could impact things, but I think basically when you reserve, depending on how the huge pages is set up on the machine, if it's one where you reserve huge pages, then you'd effectively be taking the amount of huge pages that you reserve away from the available RAM.
Yeah,
Okay.
it uses the current experiment shows around, I think it is 6 or 7 huge pages, and it uses the transparent, so you don't need to explicitly allocate.
Okay, right. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if it's got transparent huge pages, then that should be okay.
That's what it uses right now. So if your system or benchmarking machine does have it already enabled, then it will just use from there.
Okay.
But you need to definitely build with that option. Use large pages, I believe.
So I'm just going through and updating the job to remove the publish step, since we don't want that. But then there's a job you can edit to do that. Just give me one more sec. Okay, there's publish. Got a few more to delete here. Okay, so publish. Okay, come on. What's going on with this browser? Oops, there's one I didn't delete. Oops, another one. Hold on. So here, I'll just paste it into the, you should already, as a member of the benchmarking work group, be able to edit and then run this one.
Okay.
And I think you'll just need to add in like where the configure is, if there's like an extra option to add or something like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
add it in before it builds things.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other, I guess we got 1 minute left. Any other issues or things we should talk about? I'm just going to check the YouTube stream to see if there's anything there. If anybody has any questions and who's watching the stream, you can post them. I don't think there's been any comments. So I guess if that's it, then we'll all talk to everybody next time.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.